Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar on cybersecurity and steps you need to take as business owners to protect your business. There will be an opportunity to ask questions at the end of the presentation, so if you'd like, you can raise your hand, type a message into the window, and we'll answer it near the end of the presentation. Without further ado, let's go into our agenda for today. We're going to start with talking about cybersecurity breach trends, summarizing for all of you business owners all of the news articles and trends that we see in the industry as it pertains to the small and medium-sized businesses and the cyber threats that they face. We'll talk a little bit about cybercrime, what it is, and the most common types of cyber attacks that we're seeing with our clients today. And then we'll move into the steps that each business needs to consider taking for themselves to protect themselves, beginning with a risk assessment, moving through policy governance for their employees, the rules of the road, if you will, training of their employees, technology protections that protect when they don't follow their training and they don't follow the policies and they click anyways, moving into cyber liability insurance at the end. So those would encompass the 9 things that your businesses need to do to protect themselves. And finally, we'll end up with the Neoscope Shield, which is our bundled set of services and training here from Neoscope on how we can provide all of these items to your business directly or through our partner organizations with regards to the last one, cyber insurance, to protect your company and to bail it out when a problem occurs. Or move it forward to prevent an attack from being successful. We have about a 45-minute presentation, and we'll leave 15 minutes for questions near the end. So I saw this article title just last week, and I thought, wow, this is what is bringing people to this webinar. Companies and friends and family and colleagues of mine are all asking, what is going on? Why are there all these attacks in all these different places, and what is I'm so nervous. I'm so worried about this. What should I do? Which was the genesis of this webinar. So I thought that was kind of a scary looking slide, but you know, we're going to show you the way so you can sleep at night, so you don't have to worry about what's going on. So here's a common misconception that I face every day. This you probably recognize this company as Target. They had a breach a couple of years ago with 40 million credit cards, 70 million data files. Home Depot had a breach. They were breached. I don't know the number of records, but they were breached. They're still in business. Sony Pictures, they put out the movie regarding North Korea, and they were attacked, and all of their email was just published to the internet for everyone to see what this actor made, that actor made. It was a terrible, terrible embarrassment to the company. They're still in business. So is Michaels. Michaels was breached. All of these companies have been breached. And here's the classic from years ago, almost a decade ago. TJX was compromised with an insecure Wi-Fi network, and their stock dropped 50%. Let's take a look exactly what happened since then, though. 50%. So it went down in 2008, 50%, and it's since quadrupled in place. What do these 5 different companies tell you? They give you a false sense of security. As a small to medium-sized business, we often think that, well, we'll just keep moving on and survive a breach just like all these other companies do. The problem with that is that you folks typically don't have the same deep pockets as a Sony or a Home Depot. You don't carry the cyber insurance to protect you and get you through with media relations companies and forensics and a security firm to handle the breach. A national study shows that 60% of firms go out of business within 6 months of a major data breach. That's a pretty stark statistics, and that's why many of you are here today, because you want to know how to protect and prevent a breach, or at least do what's within your power to protect yourselves. Add to that these disturbing trends from a couple of large security firms out there who have canvassed and collated the different types of attacks every year for, you know, at least a decade. And Symantec, the latest numbers for 2014 or 15 show SMBs as a 60% of the targeted attacks that they go in and do forensics on are at the SMB space, meaning that out of every 100 attacks that they go in and investigate, 61% of them are targeting an SMB company. Verizon puts it a little more specifically. They say that companies with less than 100 employees but more than 11 are 15 times more likely to be attacked in a cyber attack than those that are smaller and those that are larger. Doesn't mean those attacks don't occur. It just means that, you know, every 20 times, 15 or every 16 times that an attack occurs, 15 of them are against a company with in the SMB space. So what's driving these attacks? Why are these SMB, small to medium-sized businesses, so heavily attacked? One of the reasons we don't have hundreds of people on the phone today is because SMBs are very, very busy. They don't have time to devote to listening to security webinars, nor do they have time to do the security work in their organizations. Add to that, they don't have deep pockets of cash that they can spend to buy technology or to spend on labor to fix and work on cybersecurity issues. They don't have experts on staff who can advise them. You know, when you choose this project and you're putting a project out, whatever it is, who looks after security throughout the life of that project? Who says, well, when you get to choose passwords, we're going to choose a really complex one, and here's where we can safely store it, and here's how we can communicate it to everybody. It's just get it done. They're too busy. They certainly don't train their employees as much as they should. So staff do not know. Most staff that I talk to want to do the right thing. They just don't know what it is, nor do they know what policies they're supposed to be following because they haven't been defined. You know, so if small and medium-sized businesses could address these issues, we wouldn't be 15 times more likely to be attacked. Again, SMBs don't have a dedicated security staff. It's usually someone that's wearing 2 or 3 hats already who sometimes does security and advises this company. And lastly, but certainly not least, one of the biggest reasons that SMBs are attacked is because they're often a backdoor into the targeted company. When you look at Target itself, that company that was on the first slide that was breached, it wasn't Target that was breached directly. It was their small HVAC vendor that was attacked, and the trusted back-end connectivity from the HVAC vendor into the Target network, and this may be also true for Home Depot, was the way the hackers got into those larger firms. Think about your clients. Are there clients that you support that might be the ultimate target of an attack that's going to come through your computers and your relationship with that company? That's often the case, and it's something you need to be concerned about. Let's talk briefly about cybercrime and what it is. Honestly, it's a very simple thing. It's activity involving a computer and a network. And that computer can either be the target of the crime or used to conduct the crime. It's that simple. 3 common types of cybercrime that we see, and this one is by far the largest right now, is the ransomware. This is where someone clicks on a phishing email link, it downloads a Trojan to their desktop that starts encrypting their files and encrypts all the shared drive files, and we get called in, how do I buy a Bitcoin to get my files back? Well, our first answer is, don't you have a backup that we can restore the files from? And if you're a client of Neoscope's, we're certainly doing those backups and we can help you recover fairly quickly in those cases. Another type of malware or cybercrime attack is what's known as the remote access Trojan. This is where, again, someone clicks on a phishing link, it downloads and installs a backdoor on their computer that goes out to the internet and says, hey, anybody want to log into this person's computer? You can. Typically, it's protected to just the hacker themselves so that only they can log in. But then they log in and they start looking around your network. Is there PCI data? Is there healthcare data? Is there proprietary information? Often these are used by nation states to steal U.S. companies' privileged information. We're facing just a huge bevy of adversaries, whether it's organized crime, nation states, script kiddies, or hackers in their mom's basement, all trying to break into our companies today. The final type of cybercrime we'll talk about is botnets. Botnets are really the collection of workstations and servers and systems around the internet that listen for a command to be issued to them to do something. There are, in the dark web, you can purchase access to a botnet to denial of service attack some company and hold them ransom for something else. This has been often done for years against gambling websites who are losing literally thousands and hundreds of thousands of dollars per hour that they are down. A hacker will buy a botnet, send millions and billions of packets to that website to bring it down, and then ransom the website owner or the gambling site that says, hey, we'll stop doing what we're doing if you just pay us $50,000. And if they pay, you know, they say, well, I'm losing $100,000 an hour. I guess I should pay this because otherwise I'm going to be down and losing millions in days, you know, across many days. So that's a bot network attack that collects these servers and computers all over the internet and then is controlled by the hacker. They're often trying to attack your businesses to expand their bot networks. All right, so now let's talk about what we should be doing as small and medium-sized businesses to protect ourselves. And I always recommend to my clients and to the clients that I get pulled in to consult with to start with a risk assessment. Remember 4 or 5 slides back where we said, what's all the reasons why we're attacked because we don't have time and money and training? Well, if you're going to spend any money, you should know what's the most critical and likely attack that's going to occur, and you should use your money to spend on those attacks wisely so you get the most bang for your buck. And that's what we start with a risk assessment. Sun Tzu wrote a book thousands of years ago called The Art of War, and it was about physical battles on the battlefield. But it still applies today in cybersecurity, in that if you don't know what your strengths and your weaknesses are, you've lost the battle before you've even begun. So by doing a risk assessment, you're identifying what are my weaknesses, what are my strengths, what can I use to protect myself best, how do I plug the gaps and holes in my system. So let's talk specifically what you get in a risk assessment. We look at your data. Data is what we're all in business because of. We have client data, whether it's of all sorts. It can be client data, it can be PCI data, HIPAA data, it can be proprietary information, it can be account registries, it can be the list of clients that we have, our costs associated with what we do in our service offerings. It's data. And it sits both at rest in our servers and our workstations and on our phones and our mobile devices, and it moves around in emails to our clients, to ourselves, and it moves between systems, and we collect it from our clients and we send it to our clients. So we look at where does data sit in your organization when we perform a risk assessment, and then we ask ourselves, what are the threats and vulnerabilities that provide us an answers to the question of where are my risks? Both of those amount to risks, but they're very different things. Threats are the hackers and the actors who take some action to compromise or attack your network or your computers. Vulnerabilities are the things they exploit. So let me give you a specific example. A hacker will scan your firewall and your web server looking for vulnerabilities. Is there an unpatched IIS server that I can run an exploit kit against and escalate my privileges to become a privileged user on that web server? And then can I pivot from that web server once I've hacked into it, and can I do any number of things? Can I expand my access into your network, to your local servers, as opposed to the web server? Can I publish malware code on your website and reference it in a phishing attack so that I can have companies come to your web server, attack employees at other companies? When they click a phishing link, it will come to your web server and download my malware from your website. There's lots of different things that they do, but that's an example of a threat and a vulnerability that amount to a risk to your business. The third thing we do in a risk assessment is ask ourselves, how likely is this particular attack or vulnerability to be exploited or to be to happen? And then finally, if it did happen, what would the impact to my business be? Right? It's all of these things come together in a risk assessment to form risk matrices that you see here. Along the x-axis, you have the likelihood, more to less, and on the y-axis, along the top or horizontally, you have the severity of the risk, low to high. And what we end up with is all of the items in red are the most critical and most likely an impactful risk that you face as a business. So that's where we need to spend our money. Too often companies are doing things in the green or in the yellow, and they're spending dollars that really should be spent on the most critical risks that they face, because those are the most impactful and the most likely to occur. So a risk assessment helps you identify your security roadmap, really, for a couple of years to begin spending those finite dollars and those finite hours to fix the things that give you the most protection. All right. Once you've identified the risks, though, what do you do with them? Typically, you look at 3 different things that you want to protect in information security you can use to mitigate those red risks that you have to deal with. There's policies that you guide your employees with that say, here's a password policy. You must pick passwords that are 8 characters or greater, that have complexity. You must use 2-factor authentication on VPNs, etc. We come and we look at the policies and we say, is there enough guidance to tell your employees what they can and cannot do? Then we look at the people in your company and we say, have they received training? Do they know how to spot a phishing email, how to hover over a link in a phishing email to say, well, I don't think Amazon would send an email to me that directed me to a Russian website, so I'm not going to click, I'm just going to delete. You want to train your people to spot the different types of attacks. The phone call that's a social engineering phone call of a competitor trying to see when are you putting in your quote or your bid for that new bit of business that they're competing with you on, and what's in it? What are the costs? What's your pricing going to be? Can they get any information out of you? The third pillar of information security that we look at providing protection through is technology, because even if you guide employees with policy and you train them how to spot when they're under attack, they still click sometimes on those links. We all know that, and I've been on case calls almost every month or every week where an employee clicked on something that almost that instant they said, oh no, I shouldn't have done that, but it's too late. So we look at technology that can help protect your company in defense in depth, robust defense in depth. So let's move into the next slide. We'll get into some of these items. Number 1 was the risk assessment. Number 2 is policies to govern and guide your employees on what actions they're allowed to do and what they're supposed to follow. Training your people is 3. Here's 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8 in the 8 ways or 9 ways is the technology. If you don't have anti-spam today and anti-phishing technology built into your email solution, you're really doing your company a disservice. It's not that expensive today. It's very reliable and robust in identifying spam. Some of the metrics that I've heard of are out of every 100 email messages that could be in my inbox or your inbox, 80 to 85% of those are spam or nuisance emails that could be filtered out with an anti-spam, anti-phishing message. Phishing is really important because those could be targeted attacks to try and infiltrate your company. And so that technology, we use Sophos Reflections. There's many different providers, but it's something you need to have in place that augments your antivirus and your anti-malware solution on the desktop. You should also be running, obviously, antivirus and anti-malware on your desktop to provide you some protection. Like your immune system, it works off of what it has already seen. The malware writers and the virus writers, the analogy between your health in the real world and the flu shot and the antivirus that you run on your desktop is a pretty good one. It can't protect you against that new virus that's just come out unless you've had the flu shot. It's only going to identify and protect you against things that have been seen before. So novel viruses, which are coming out every day, 100,000 a day, I think the antivirus writers are saying, new novel viruses are released by hackers all over the world. It's very, very difficult to keep up for them. So you need more than virus and malware today, which is where we go with 5, advanced web protection and content filtering. What you'll see in an upcoming slide is we use OpenDNS, and I'll save the specifics of how that protects you for that slide. We look at mobile device management. How many of us are worried about all the different technologies that are coming into our businesses, whether it's an iPad or an iPhone or an Android, and getting email on those systems, and are they protected? Is it encrypted? Is there a strong password on it so that someone can't steal it and get access to my company data? If you have specific pools of data within your company, if it's HIPAA or PCI or some highly proprietary intellectual property, you need data encryption on your laptops so that when you're traveling to a trade show or to a hotel room or wherever you go, that laptop, if it's stolen, it's the loss of a $1,000 device, not the loss of the data and a very expensive breach process. And then finally, the gold standard of multi-factor authentication is the technology. So these are the 8 things that we're going to be going through in a little more detail now. With policies and governing your employees, Neoscope has a solution. We partnered with a company called Policy Services that has a website that you load your policies into, and they get emailed to your employees asking them to go read the policy, click their name in a little text box to say, I've read the policy, I understand my responsibilities, and it tracks it and automates it, reducing the labor costs of most companies that we see by a factor of 10. If they're doing it on paper today and putting it into a cabinet somewhere in the HR office and locking it up every night and doing an audit of that paperwork and making sure it's accurate, you're lucky if you get it done once for each employee, let alone renewing these policies every year like you should be doing, putting the policies and governance in front of your employees, updating those policies on a regular frequency. We recommend a year. Every year we go through it, our policies here at Neoscope, and we see, do we make changes? Was there an incident? You know, we last added a social media policy to our acceptable use policy so that our employees knew how they could engage in social media without breaking the rules or putting us at risk. So this SaaS automation eliminates paper tracking and filing. It automates the reminders and the annual updates, as I've said. Here's a sample from Neoscope. We have these 7 policies in place today. We know that we're at a very high level of acceptance. We've uploaded our groups. We've uploaded our users. Here's an example of where we sit. Now, we've had a couple of folks join, so the 82% on the security incident policy is along with the employee handbook. We know exactly who those people are. They're probably in their period of performance where they have 30 days to read the handbook and the security incident policy, and then they accept it. So we're pretty close to 100%. We have an easy view into it. We can go tackle and find those people and say, hey, look, you need to follow the policies and accept your responsibility. Auditors love this view. They always want to know, are you training your employees? Are you tracking their governance and their acceptance of their responsibilities? When we do training with our employees, we want to talk about weak passwords. We want to talk about phishing emails and malware, and how do we get these things? How do we see what happens with drive-by downloads? And so we always want to teach our employees, and you want to teach your employees what those items are and how to spot that phishing attack by hovering over those URLs and identifying the cases where it's a legitimate phishing attack. Your anti-spam and anti-phishing solutions should be able to weed out a fair amount of that if you have it in place, but there are times where it still gets through and you still have to train your employees how to find those. Antivirus and anti-malware is like the seatbelt in your car. You have to wear it, but we're not relying just today on antivirus and anti-malware. We're relying on the crumple zone in our car. We're relying on the airbag. We're relying on so many other technologies in our car to protect and keep us straight. The same is true on our computers. You have to use your antivirus, your anti-malware. You need to have your anti-spam and anti-phishing, but it's just not enough today. So what can we do? Even the virus vendors themselves are saying that antivirus is not 100% effective. This is a Gartner overview of all the antivirus products out there, saying it's 20 to 50% effective against new threats. Symantec, makers of one of the best antivirus products on the planet, says it's dead. I, as I've just alluded to, view it very similarly to Eugene Kaspersky. Kaspersky is another antivirus vendor, and again, he says it's like a seatbelt. It's important, you need to use it, but it's not the only thing. What else can we do as businesses? Well, there's a technology out there at the DNS network layer that can help protect you called OpenDNS. This is something we bundle into that shield we'll talk about at the end. But what OpenDNS does is look at the DNS requests that leave your business. And just for a moment, there's probably all of you know what DNS is, but it's domain name system. It's like the phone book. When you want to reach a website, you type the website into your browser, but the computer says, what's this? Where is the IP address for this website? And it goes to DNS to get the IP, just like we would go to the phone book in years ago to find the phone number of a person by their name. It's the very same thing. Today, OpenDNS gets 80 billion requests a day and looks at these and says, I have a request to go to a website that has seen, for the last 5 years, it's had 1,000 hits a day. But today it has 100,000 hits. So unless they ran a Super Bowl ad, there's probably something wrong with the website. Do a quick scan of it. So they scan it, they say, ooh, it's hosting malware, and there's a phishing campaign, so we have 100,000 people that have gone to try and download the malware. We're going to block it for our customers that are on DNS, OpenDNS. So what OpenDNS does is it's another layer that shortens the antivirus window, which is typically 4 and 5 days long today, down to 12 hours, maybe 24 hours for these websites and these internet properties to be identified by the OpenDNS heuristics and big data analysis and block or prevent malware infections on our customers' computers. It also can protect or contain bot networks in the outbound direction. If you have a computer that you took to a trade show and you installed a USB stick to get a document, maybe you infected your computer or it's got a botnet, however it got there, OpenDNS can prevent it from going and checking in with its command and control server to go and attack that gambling website and knock it offline. The third thing that it can do at the bottom row here is content filtering. OpenDNS can look at all of the queries coming out of your company's website, out of your company's corporate LAN rather, and say, okay, we're going to block all access to pornography, we're going to block access to hate literature, neo-Nazism, guns, you name it, whatever it is that you would like to or not like to, you can add up to 69 different categories of websites that you can block. Even social media. Some companies, they don't want their employees on Facebook and social media. It's wasting them too much time, so they block access to social media in the office. It's up to you. OpenDNS protects your computers from malware, from participating in bot networks, and can be used as a content filter. It's a great redundant level of security above and beyond antivirus. Let's talk briefly about mobile device management. Mobile device management is the protection of your phones and your laptops to secure and protect the data that's on them. As these devices, proliferate throughout our organizations and our lives, and quite frankly, our dinner tables, I have to tell my kids almost every day, you're not allowed to use your phone at the dinner table, but they're involved in all of our lives everywhere we go. Those devices have access to our corporate data, and so we need mobile device management software often to enable us to remotely wipe it if it gets stolen, to ensure that it's locked, set lock passcodes or fingerprint requirements for individuals to force them to require to secure and protect those devices, to require strong passwords, and sometimes to separate personal use off company networks. Mobile device management can do all of these things. If you're allowing email and data to exist on your iPads, or maybe your company's using them, you do need an ability to manage those in a consistent fashion to protect the data that's on them. Laptop encryption, there's some interesting story that I look at here. We had a healthcare provider, we were thinking about encrypting their laptops, and we went to the HIPAA wall of shame. We said, let's look at all of the breaches. The HIPAA wall of shame is every healthcare-related breach of 500 or more records over the last 12 years. And if we looked at all the breaches of all time, there was 33% of them related back to unencrypted laptops. But we then looked at the last 100 breaches, which amount to the last year and a half or so, and only 9% were represented by a laptop-related loss. What that tells us is that If you are a healthcare provider, healthcare providers are getting much, much better at encrypting laptops because in the beginning, many of them were not encrypted and they had to be reported when they were stolen or lost as a major breach of HIPAA data. In the last year, very few of them are lost or stolen that are not encrypted. So if you're a healthcare provider and you're not encrypting your laptops, shame on you. You should be, because this data is just too valuable to hackers. In fact, some reports I've read are 50 times more valuable on the black market than a credit card number today. A healthcare record is. And that stands to reason, right? Logically, you are a bank, you issue a new credit card number to that compromised account holder. If you're a healthcare provider, can you issue a new healthcare record to someone? It's not something you can just jumble the numbers up and reissue. It's only one time. I mean, you have to save these things and protect them because they can't be replaced. So we need to do laptop encryption in many cases in certain areas. Multi-factor authentication is a third area, the eighth area I want to talk about today. This is the gold standard for authentication. And briefly, it's something you know, which is typically a knowledge question or a password. It's something you have, which could be a text message to your cell phone or a smart card that has a one-time password on it that displays in a little window. We've seen those RSA tokens maybe. Or thirdly, it's something you are, biometrics, right? Your thumbprint on your iPhone is a biometric. So when we here at Neoscope go to log into our VPN or any of our critical applications, we have to provide two factors. We have a username and password, which is our first factor. That's something we know. It's a knowledge question. And then we must provide a one-time password token to get into all of our critical resources, whether it's our VPN access, remote access, or our critical applications. We have 3 of them that we've identified as having sensitive data in them, and therefore our policy says you must two-factor authenticate into it. So we're using what's called 2FA or multi-factor authentication into those. And again, it's a repeat. It's the gold standard. It's a requirement for HIPAA access. It's a requirement for PCI, and it's a best practice for everyone else. The ninth and the bonus thing that we talk about for your companies is cyber liability coverage. This is your get-out-of-jail-free card, or not really, but it will help you survive and not be one of those statistics in the 60% that go out of business if you do have a major breach. You can buy coverage that covers you for data breach and privacy crisis and provides credit monitoring for the records that were breached. You can have it relate to the defacement of your website with something called multimedia liability. There's the extortion liability, which incidentally, every ransomware attack is an extortion liability, but typically the premiums don't cover, you know, a $700 BitLock Bitcoin recovery cost. Network security liability for advanced persistent threat in your network that causes you, to spend lots of money on forensics and expensive software to monitor and extricate the hackers out of your network. Other coverages that you're probably already familiar with are directors and officers, errors and omissions. So that's what you should be doing. I'm going to talk just ever so briefly for like 3 to 5 minutes on this Neoscope Shield bundle that we put to our clients, just to give you a sense and a flavor for what's available out there to help you do those 8 or 9 things to protect your business. So we've got a security assessment. That's the first step we take with all of our Neoscope Shield clients. We have 3 levels. We have a light, which is a questionnaire. We have a silver, which is an individual over the phone or on staff that reports to me, providing a set of questions and reviewing them with you and meeting with a number of your employees. We have a gold level, which is myself coming out, talking with many of your senior principals at your business, going through a detail-oriented, set of questions and answers and a full, 50-page report with the risk matrices and all the advanced stuff that comes with that. We also provide policies to guide your employees. There's typically 5 policies that we like to see. A WISP, which is a written information security policy or plan. That's a requirement by Massachusetts privacy legislation. If you have privileged information on any Massachusetts resident, you must have a WISP in place which guides your employees on the security requirements they have as an employee of your company. Often missed by many people. We start with the WISP. That's the master plan. It references a password policy, an acceptable use policy, a information handling policy, and then there's a few others. Sometimes there's a desktop security policy, sometimes a remote access. There's different things that come out of the security assessment, the risk assessment. From a technology perspective, and security awareness training, we also, through that policy services website, assign videos in classroom training to the companies that purchase our Shield product, so that we go and answer the employees' questions in real time. We also assign them, 3-minute videos on passwords and how to create a secure password, on social engineering, on a phishing emails, how do you identify these things, 3 minutes, questions, tracking it all so that you can show to an auditor or to your own, senior leadership that you're doing everything possible to protect your company. On the technology side, all of our clients get an anti-spam, encrypted email, antivirus solution. We often provide a password manager to our clients if they need it. This is a relatively recent addition. Password manager is what stores your passwords for you and puts them into your browser for you, but it's an encrypted password store. And really, it's the only way to get unique passwords in your employees between their Facebook account and their VPN login. Without a password manager, they're always reusing these passwords. They're weak passwords, and it's kind of like the Achilles heel of technology today is passwords. We've talked about all these other items: the advanced web protection and content filtering through OpenDNS, mobile device management, laptop encryption, multi-factor authentication. Our Shield clients also get an internet vulnerability assessment. If you remember Sun Tzu and the Art of War, you need to know what your weaknesses are. You only find that by assessing, doing a vulnerability assessment of your own website, your own firewall. As part of the Shield, we do that to make sure the internet cannot find vulnerabilities in your site before we do. And of course, everyone gets me as their CSO, as a consultant, as part of the Neoscope Shield. So this is it broken down in just another view of that. There are many a la carte security services that we would sell to our clients based on their risk. Data encryption at rest and in motion. Not everybody needs to encrypt their laptops, so we don't include it in the Shield overall pricing. I'll let you look at that. And by the way, this presentation is being recorded and will be available for you, so you can come back and look at this in the future. It'll be a YouTube video. We'll send that out to all the participants as well. That's pretty much it. We're at 2:40, so we're within about 40 to 45 minutes. I want to open it up for questions now if anyone has questions.